This is, if you're listening to this in succession, this is immediately after us talking about the rise of fascism. I still am groggy from the vaccination firmware update.
And I am still pissed off from the Nazi talk.
Yes, didn't really get any room to breathe in or walk around or kind of just jump immediately into it. So
here in the podcast factory at Antifa headquarters,
they don't give us breaks.
They do not give us breaks.
I get an unpaid water break of 30 seconds before I get whipped to get back to it.
Yeah, I tried to start a union and that went terribly.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Dude,
we're doing this.
They started to like flay you or something, if memory serves. We don't have to relive it.
Yeah, I don't want to relive this.
Yeah.
Suckers. Now, friends, these books are free. Suckers. Paid for by real Americans who want others to know the truth. Suckers. But I'm an American. Some of the things I see in this country of ours make my blood boil. Suckers. What's going to become of us real Americans? Suckers. Real Americans. Suckers. Real Americans. Suckers. Real Americans. Suckers.
Remember that when you hear this kind of talk, somebody is going to get something out of it, and it isn't going to be you. So let's not be suckers.
Hello, everybody. This is episode 4 of Don't Be a Sucker with Tom and Tom. TNT. It's dynamite.
I'm so glad that did not end up being the podcast name. TNT. I know that was like maybe
that was a joke one.
That was a joke suggestion. I know, but I looking back, I'm really glad that one.
I wasn't adamant about that.
That one did not come to fruition. Yeah.
Yeah. So today, well, this episode, I say today as if we didn't just record another episode
it is
earlier. Tonight,
it's 9:40.
9:40.
No, it's 8:54.
We're going to be looking at fascism more from an outside point of view, from a lot of people who were there. Not there, but, kind of...
Some of them were there.
Some of them were there. Some of them a bit after, but their own analyses of fascism. Largely, a lot of these people have more of a leftist lens with how they're viewing it.
Some of them. A good deal of them.
Good deal of them. A couple, no. I see Umberto Eco a lot on like anarchist websites.
Yeah. H.G. Wells is definitely more of a liberal, which we'll be talking about as well. I think, and I don't know if Robert Paxton really has a tinge.
I'm sure he does.
I'm sure he has.
I don't
tinge,
know much about Robert Paxton myself. But.
Probably, he wrote a good book. We'll talk about it. We'll talk.
Yeah.
About it, but
so I would like to just. Can I start off with my definition of fascism,
brother? Help yourself.
All right.
You know what I mean,
I'm about to eat.
Bro's about to eat. Yeah. So actually, how about I ask you this? How did you cobble this together? This definition that you arrived to. What was the thought process and the logical kind of development, I guess you could say, of this definition?
Well, I mean, just from reading a lot of the people we're going to talk about, I think there are aspects of it that made it in this definition. One thing that really opened my eyes to the purposes of fascism was Leon Trotsky's definition in his essay on it. And also Michael Parenti, just both kind of putting a class analysis to what fascism is, because like we'll talk about with Michael Parenti, there is a very rational reason why fascism is used by capitalists and by the ruling classes, even though fascists have very irrational methods. And it really, to me, fascism feels like, the whole famous quote, fascism is capitalism in decay. And kind of that idea mixed with like kind of Umberto Eco's idea of like syncretism, that it fascism takes a lot of ideologies. It's a scavenger ideology that takes a lot of different things and just kind of mushes them together. And it reminded me of kind of the Frankenstein story.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a Frankenstein analogy in there because Frankenstein is just a bunch of body parts just kind of thrown together and shocked to life. So without further ado, you are the first people to be hearing this. So my definition: fascism is capitalism in recovery mode. It is ultra-nationalistic, counter-revolutionary, imperialistic, pro-monopolistic, anti-democratic, and anti-progressive. Every accusation from a fascist is a projection. While the foot soldiers are the middle class and lumpen proletariat, the real benefactor of fascism is big capital. Fascism seeks to play the role of Dr. Frankenstein in the conglomeration of the decaying cadavers of capital, scavenging pieces of syncretic ideologies, conspiracies, pseudoscience, and pseudo-history to create a monster built on moral panics and fear before shocking it to life with the middle class's common hostility towards the proletariat, or the working class. Using revolutionary messages with its revolutionary edge dulled, the propagandists dress the monster in a nice suit while telling you the real monsters, whether internal or external to the country, are all around you, demoralizing and destroying the country that made your country great. Thus, you are asked to help to make your country great again. This means that fascism requires a scapegoat. Thus, it is inherently bigoted. In the words of Leon Trotsky, fascism is composed of all the putrid vapors of disintegrating bourgeois society.
Yes, this is a pretty good quote, or a pretty good definition, I gotta say. That's a good quote. I mean, it definitely kind of hits every note that you would see out of, it's a bigoted ideology, one that co-ops that any revolutionary fervor within society to actually meaningfully change it in order to just kind of keep the status quo as it is. And
it'll just try and reel you in through whatever means. I mean, that's the cobbling together of this Frankenstein it
plays on your fears, no matter where your fears may lay and how they may differ from location to location. Like what is a quote unquote undesirable in society in Eastern Europe would vary much more so than somebody in like Western Europe or like in East Asia or in North America or in South America.
Right.
It varies from playing field to playing field, but the idea persists.
And it will use any conspiracy to really try and reel you into what its aims are.
Right.
I mean, obviously Hitler used the conspiracy of, Jewish bankers ruling the world, but a big part of Nazism, and I don't think Hitler was specifically into this vein of Nazism, but I believe Himmler was
kind of the more occult,
the more occultish side with like the Tool Society, who kind of drew on the Atlantis conspiracy that and kind of put Atlantis up in the North Pole,
the real 40 shit, like just that really kind of high level like hyper racist, like there's like a Aryan nationalist, and then there's like a hyper racist, like just borderline schizophrenic Nazi.
Claiming that these Aryans came out of like a hollow earth in Atlantis in the North Pole to come bring culture down into India through, like, it's a big reason why Nazis and Hitler were like obsessed with India, and like because they believed that Aryans came down. It's the most insane shit. And a lot of what we'll talk about in the future in this podcast will be hitting on a lot of that insane shit and how it kind of draws people in. But let's start talking about some of our people here.
Yeah.
Who do you want to start with?
So we could go ahead and start with, I mean, you'd already mentioned him a couple of times. We could start with Leon Trotsky.
Leon.
He had quite a few things to say about fascism. For those who don't know, Leon Trotsky, he kind of looks like Colonel Sanders.
he looks like he makes some mid fried chicken.
Mid.
KFC's not. I like
Bro.
Popeyes. I'm a Popeyes.
I was big into churches. Kind of sad. I don't really see churches.
I've never had churches. I should.
Really?
I know.
It was like a staple.
I fucked up, Tom. I know.
Staple out west, bro. But no, Leon Trotsky. He was a big Russian communist revolutionary. At the time of the Russian, well, prior to the October Revolution, but kind of like as they're moving away from the czarist form of government, there are two factions within the like far left wing of the Social Democratic Party within the Russian Duma. So you had the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks. Leon Trotsky is a Menshevik. He would later be like, well, okay, maybe these Bolsheviks kind of know what they're doing, and would kind of side with them. But at the start, he was a Menshevik. He would eventually go on as the October Revolution is coming into full swing. He was a very talented military leader. He was like the head of the military all throughout the Russian Civil War.
Yeah, he's a huge reason why that was a successful revolution.
Yes, yeah, he was big dog. Like regardless what you think of him, like whether you are a fanboy of whatever revolutionary, of Lenin, of if you're like a big Stalin head or whatever the fuck, you have to recognize real. And Trotsky was as real as it got back in these days. He kind of knew what he was doing. He also this is totally unrelated, but had a very strange fashion sense. He was kind of like a predecessor to the Nazis in that he really loved to be fully clad in leather. Like him and his private guard.
Dominatrixes.
Like if you look up a picture of him and his like the Soviet private guard, like those early Red soldiers, fully leather clad, like top to bottom. Loved the leather. He of course he has like his own kind of set of ideology. Like after Lenin dies of like a brain hemorrhage or a stroke or something like that. Like him and Joseph Stalin are kind of vying for power, like seeing like who's going to take over. And as time progresses, more and more politicians within Soviet society kind of throw their weight behind Joseph Stalin, out of favor of Trotsky. Trotsky has like a few more like he recognized himself as being kind of like the left wing opposition within the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. He had this idea of like a permanent revolution that you know, it would just kind of have to keep going both within society but like the world at large. And as his ideals are kind of pushing up against Stalin and what he had envisioned for the Third International, this idea of like socialism in one country, over a permanent global revolution, Trotsky is exiled from the Soviet Union. He lives out the rest of his days in Mexico, where he gets really chummy with artist Frida Kahlo. And perhaps
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and she, if you want to look those up, she has a couple paintings dedicated to
Leon
Trotsky and other communist revolutionaries. Yeah, they got real friendly, real chummy.
Oh yeah, there they are together, huh?
Well, no, I think those are actors or maybe like wax.
That's not
sculptures.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they wouldn't be a color photo. They were like
it's one of those like they colored it like today.
No, I don't think that's
It's like one of those.
I don't think they were taking a color photo together. But But anyway, yeah, and unfortunately, Trotsky's road would come to a abrupt end, kind of like if you were driving a car and then just like swerved into a tree. He got assassinated by a Spanish Republican as an agent of Stalin in Mexico via an ice pick. Pretty bad way to go, if you ask me.
He did.
But he had quite a lot of things to say about fascism. He unfortunately would not live to see the end of fascism when he was assassinated. I think it was like 1941 or 42. So it was still in like, at that point, I'd say 1941 was probably the scariest year if you were an anti-fascist.
And this is before a lot of the horrific crimes of the Nazis were really put out there.
Well, that's the thing. I feel like a lot of people said that in hindsight. It was like, oh, well, we didn't know. You know what I mean? But like a lot of people that were leaving Germany were like, they're doing some crazy fucked up shit.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Like there was the very famous, I forget exactly what boat it was, but it was a boat filled to the brim with like Jewish refugees trying to enter the United States that was turned away by the U.S. government because they're like, it's not that bad over there. You guys can figure it out.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure not many of them survived, unfortunately, once they were recaptured. But Trotsky had a lot to say about fascism and how it came to be. I don't know if you have any excerpt or analysis you want to open up with.
So
I got quite a few.
The book, or it's an essay.
It's a series of essays. I'm pretty sure, yeah.
It's called Fascism: What It Is and How to Fight It.
If you want to read it, it's on of course the gold mine for Marxist literature, Marxist.org.
Definitely just go there in general. They got some good stuff. I like looking at a lot of their definitions on there of just all sorts of things. I mean, if you have any questions about really anything, so
it's a good read.
One thing you could look up on that website and will come up in these next couple things I'm going to talk about are the terms bourgeois and petty bourgeois and proletariat. We've talked a little bit about that ourselves. I mean, and I'm going to reiterate real quick that the bourgeois is the capitalist class.
The bourgeoisie.
And...
Or bougie.
Bougie. Bad and bougie.
Yeah.
These are your Elon Musks, your Henry Fords, your, pretty much
your Edisons.
Your Edisons, all the, yeah. And then petty bourgeois are more like they're either small business owners or they're like kind of middle management. Like they are the ones who get paid really well and kind of do the bidding of the bourgeois.
Not even really well, like just better. Yeah.
Enough so that they don't...
enough that they have a chip on their shoulder.
They have a stratification above the proletariat who they are managing.
Right.
And the proletariat is the working class, those who actually create all the wealth, which the bourgeois and petty bourgeois will take advantage of. So I really like Trotsky's, this is a pretty basic class analysis of how fascism kind of works. And it's essentially like a hostility, like a common hostility between the bourgeois and petty bourgeois towards the proletariat, even though the bourgeois and petty bourgeois kind of don't trust each other. Like the large capitalists know that the smaller capitalists are trying to eventually kind of take their place, so they'll kind of do anything they can to keep them down a bit. And oftentimes, just in capitalism as a whole, a lot of the small businesses get weeded out through just large industry kind of taking over. But I'll let Trotsky do the explaining. So he says, the relationship between the bourgeoisie and its basic social support, the petty bourgeoisie, does not at all rest upon reciprocal confidence and pacific collaboration. In its mass, the petty bourgeoisie is an exploited and disenfranchised class. It regards the bourgeoisie with envy and often with hatred. The bourgeoisie, on the other hand, while utilizing to the support of the petty bourgeoisie, distrusts the latter, for it very correctly fears its tendency to break down the barriers set up for it from above. This should ring a lot of alarm bells with Donald Trump today. Definitely taking advantage of small business owners and kind of that middle class element, that petty bourgeois element. He is riling a lot of these people up, and he, like most other fascists, will just dump them to the side of the road. And so this next part of this quote is talking about the hostility towards the working class between both of them. He says, political art consisted in fusing the petty bourgeoisie into oneness through its common hostility to the proletariat. What must be done in order to improve things? First of all, throttle those who are underneath. Impotent before big capital, the petty bourgeoisie hopes in the future to regain its social dignity through the ruin of its workers, of the workers. So I think that that's just a good basic analysis of what's happening between the people who own things and the people who are workers, right? I mean, what does that strike in you? What does that have you thinking?
So, I mean, yeah, it definitely. I think it kind of illustrates how they the fascist movement kind of utilizes the petty bourgeoisie, kind of like it's like a nice blend between like more populous than the bourgeoisie, like higher in numbers.
It's still a mass movement
it is
to
still
an extent,
but it's like a mass movement light. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like a Miller
yeah.
Lite. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you're getting a mass movement light.
because like he
It's
says,
a vehicle to swell the movement up into. And in fact, I actually have a Trotsky quote here that expands on that. He writes, German fascism, like Italian fascism, raised itself to power on the backs of the petty bourgeoisie, which it turned into battering rams against the organizations of the working class and the institutions of democracy. But fascism in power is at least of all the rule of the petty bourgeoisie. On the contrary, it is the most ruthless dictatorship of monopoly capital. Mussolini is right. The middle classes are incapable of independent policies. During periods of great crisis, they are called upon to reduce the absurdity of the policies of one to the two basic classes. Fascism succeeded in putting them at the service of capital. It again just kind of swings them back into like what they're serving, which at the end of the day, it is the proliferation of a market economy, of a capitalist system, of subjugation of the working class by the industrialists, the capitalists, the landowners, etc. I think one thing that set Trotsky apart from what was kind of becoming like the more dominant strain of socialist positioning against fascism in particular was his idea on the united front against fascism. Today, this is kind of like I feel like this is more of an accepted idea as like something that can kind of work against fascism. This idea that like essentially in that being that like, there ought to be some kind of cooperation between socialists and even liberals in favor of rooting out, which again pushes up against Tom's squinting at me.
If you could see my face right now,
yeah.
it's an audio only podcast. But.
Yeah, Trotsky was adamant that this was the way to go, and this is the line that he would push to the Fourth International. But essentially he kind of more focused on this united front, which is very different from what the Third International and the broader socialist movement was advocating. Stalin was definitely a lot more of the opinion that if you scratch a liberal, a fascist bleeds. So any cooperation with liberals will ultimately bite them in the ass in the future, which was evident in the way that he kept trying to hit up the UK and France of like, hey, we should probably do something about Germany, and then being like, no, he's probably chill after we give him this little bit of land.
Yeah.
Just this continual pushback. Of course, like, the inability to reconcile those differences unfortunately met in Trotsky's very dramatic end of his life, but
with an ice pick.
Yes, with an
That's
ice
gotta
pick.
fucking suck.
That's
right?
gotta be probably one of the worst ways to go, aside from like being burned alive. I feel like,
or drowning. I don't like the idea of drowning.
There's quite a few, but ice picking is probably up there as far as like the bad ways. But yeah, we can probably go ahead and move on to a couple of the other folks we got to talk about here. If you want to, Tom, take it to the
Little
man.
Parenti? Little Parenti?
The man, the myth.
The people want Parenti, right? Please read Black Shirts and Reds. I mean, I think it's just a great book all around. I think Michael Parenti is an amazing writer, speaker, just the man.
He's really the top dog.
He is the top dog for sure. The big thing that I always come back to when thinking about Parenti's idea of fascism is his idea of rational fascism, which we've touched a little. I'm going to quote him again, and I'm going to keep quoting him, and whether you like it or not. So in Black Shirts and Reds, chapter 1, page 11. Some writers stress the irrational features of fascism. By doing so, they overlook the rational politico-economic functions that fascism performed. Much of politics is the rational manipulation of irrational symbols. Certainly, this is true of fascist ideology, whose emotive appeals have served a class control function. So, very similar to what Trotsky was saying is that fascism serves capital. What Parenti is saying here is that there is a rational reason why fascists gained power.
Right.
Even though when we think of fascism and Nazis, we think of that, ridiculous kind of anti-Semitic, irrational, like tool society.
It's usually paired up with the idea of like, God, how could anyone ever be suckered by these like lunatics?
Right.
You know? And without realizing that, like, no, they were definitely playing into the fears that were prevalent at the time and just kind of seeing how far they could push the envelope.
Right, exactly. And it was for rational reasons that capitalists and the ruling classes put like we were saying, Hitler was put in place because he was promising some sort of just structure, like just kind of whipping the whole country back into shape.
Right.
And so that's the big thing I think of with Parenti. There is another quote here that I'd like to throw in there, just about. Again, it's about serving capital. I think Michael Parenti does a good job of explaining it, so I'll let him do it. Is fascism merely a dictatorial force in the service of capitalism? That may not be all it is, but that certainly is an important part of fascism's raison d'etre. The function Hitler himself kept referring to when he talked about saving the industrialists and bankers from Bolshevism. It is a subject that deserves far more attention than it has received, and I definitely agree. I think as a capitalist country here in America, our education system doesn't really like talking about how fascism serves capital or how capitalism sows the. I mean the.
I feel often it a lot of the time, at least how it's explained in like public schooling, especially in America, is just kind of like, whoa, look at this thing that kind of just came out of nowhere. This shit just kind of came out the woodworks. Isn't that weird? Like, why'd that happen? Oh, they played on a bunch of, stoking fears. Better not let this happen again. Never again. Anyway, here, let's keep doing it again. Like, because I'm bored.
Yeah, because we like our...
Me installing fascism because I'm bored, lol.
Yeah, lol.
No, but genuinely, it is kind of like it feels divorced from any economic, utility that the ideology possessed within it, which was definitely a driving force into it being propelled in these societies. Which again it's divorced from our understanding of the ideology within the United States, because you don't really want to reckon with the fact that like it's helping to uphold this system that we love.
We love it.
We love it. We're so...
I have in my studio here a yodeling pickle. Do you think that would happen if we weren't capitalists?
The one of the many innovations.
I mean, the one of the many innovations.
Can you play it? Can you play it into the mic real quick?
Here we go. It's yodeling pickles time to shine.
It just kind of keeps going. Really, I'm just so glad we're destroying the planet to get more things like that just out into everybody's grabby little hands.
Love to see it. And so I just have one more quote I want to bring up here. There's plenty of quotes from this book. I mean, I just
please read it.
Please read it. So he says, years ago, I used to say that fascism never succeeded in solving the irrational contradictions of capitalism. Today, I am of the opinion that it did accomplish that goal, but only for the capitalists, not for the populace. Fascism never intended to offer a social solution that would serve the general populace, only a reactionary one, forcing all the burdens and losses onto the working public. Divested of its ideological and organizational paraphernalia, fascism is nothing more than a final solution to the class struggle. The totalistic submergence and exploitation of democratic forces for the benefit and profit of higher financial circles. Fascism is a false revolution. A false revolution. It claims to be, this is me talking, it claims to be a revolution, claims to be revolutionary. It is counter-revolutionary. It cultivates the appearance, this is back to Parenti, it cultivates the appearance of popular politics and a revolutionary aura without offering a genuine revolutionary class content. It propagates a new order while serving the same old moneyed interests. Its leaders are not guilty of confusion, but of deception. That they work hard to mislead the public does not mean they themselves are misled. Parenti's absolutely spitting here.
Spitting fire. Straight fire.
I can't add a whole lot to that. I mean, he caps it off.
Kind of hits it there.
Yeah, he really hits it.
Please read any of his books. He's a really good writer too. Just like kind of, just in any, he kind of knows what's up. You know what I mean?
He really does. Yeah. Inventing Reality, also great.
It's a good book.
All right, so the next person we'd like to talk about is Rajani Palme Dutt. And his book, Fascism in the Social Revolution, which is from, what year is that?
I think that was like 1936, 35 or something. Unless I'm really off.
And that is from 1934.
Ah, it was 1 year off.
Yes, 1 year off.
Damn.
So it's kind of crazy because he precedes.
First off, who is Rajani Palme Dutt?
He was an Indian. Well, he was a British Indian guy.
Yeah, he was I believe his on his mom's side it was some Swedish royalties. So he had Swedish Indian descendant living within Britain, who is the general secretary of the Communist Party of Great Britain at this time.
You seem like a interesting
dog.
dude. Yeah. He precedes Michael Parenti's idea of rational fascism. I was like, my jaw dropped because I was like, I always thought rational fascism, was kind of a Parentian idea. And then I see Rajani Palme Dutt talking about this in 1934. Kind of crazy. And because he's calling it. This is 1934.
Right.
This is like pretty early. This is a year after Hitler comes to power. I mean, this is not like, hindsight is 2020. He's like in this shit.
Right.
2020 in this shit.
Right. In the thick of it.
Yeah. So he says, the mystical and openly non-rational character of fascist ideology and propaganda is only the inevitable expression of its class role to maintain the domination of a doomed and decaying class. And caste. I almost said caste.
One or the other.
The present situation of world capitalism is in the highest degree irrational. It is not rational that foodstuffs should be destroyed while millions are undernourished, that building workers should be unemployed, while housing becomes more and more overcrowded and inadequate. But all this is inherent in the present stage of capitalism. Therefore, capitalism can no longer defend itself on rational grounds. Today, capitalism defends itself on mystical grounds: race, the nation, Christianity, spirituality, the mystery of patriotism, faith. This is the language of the modern defenders of capitalism, and in particular of fascism.
Yeah, so kind of expanding on that, just kind of calling out the fact that like the whole system just top down from the jump was never rational. Like the destruction of foodstuffs because it wasn't making money, or the destruction of homes because, again, wasn't making money. None of it really makes sense if you really think about it. Like why we would destroy things that were already manufactured, they're already brought into this earth to better somebody's life, but because the society at large is centered around making a buck, people don't get to experience the joys that such a commodity would perhaps give them,
Exactly,
or at least some kind of easing of their life. So just kind of developing that, like, you may think that fascists are like really wacky, wacko guys, but when you think it, you're also a little wacky for participating in the system and thinking it's normal, you know? Like when in fact it's very anti-human. It's very
it's isolating.
It is very alienating.
It is. Yeah. One of the things that really hit me with Rajani Palme Dutt's analysis is this next quote here. And I have it titled, this little section, just complete and pointed capitalism. And I'll let him explain it. The sensation of a new ideology, that's in quotes, which intoxicates the more fanatical and emotional adherents of fascism, giving them the illusion of a liberation from old superstitions and a new dynamic power, represents in reality no new ideology distinct from the general ideology of capitalism, but only the typical ideology of the most modern phase of capitalism. That is to say, the sharpened expression of all the tendencies of imperialism or capitalism in decay in the period of the general crisis. So it is a sharpened expression of capitalism. It is, I like to think of it as a caricature. It takes your most dominant features that exist and just exaggerates them to all hell.
Right.
Like, go get your caricature done. Like, that shit makes you look fucking foolish.
Right. You will not be happy no matter who is doing it for you.
No.
no matter how much of a pained laugh you give to the artist when they hand it over, like you cannot pass that off as, oh, I like the piece that you just made.
You never like it.
Yeah.
He goes on. Fascism, in fact, is no particular independent doctrine and system arising in opposition to existing capitalist society. Fascism, on the contrary, is the most complete and consistent working out in certain conditions of extreme decay of the most typical tendencies and policies of modern capitalism. What are these characteristics, which are most common, subject to a difference in degree, to all modern capitalism and to fascism? The most outstanding of these characteristics may be summarized as follows. The basic aim of the maintenance of capitalism in the face of revolution, which the advance of productive technique and of class antagonisms threatens. Talked about that a little bit. Number 2, the consequent intensification of the capitalist dictatorship. Number 3, the limitation and repression of the independent working class movement in building up of a system of organized class cooperation. Number 4, the revolt against and increasing suppression of parliamentary democracy. Number 5, the extending state monopolist organization of industry and finance. Monopolization. That should have you think about a lot of what's going on. You know, Netflix, Google, Amazon. Number 6, the closer concentration of each imperialist bloc into a single economic political unit. We're talking NAFTA. We're talking EU. Is that right? Is that EU?
It's a trade union or economic union.
Number 7, the advance to war as the necessary accompaniment of the increasing imperialist antagonisms. I'll read that again. The advance to war as the necessary accompaniment of the increasing imperialist antagonisms. We're talking Israel, Palestine. We're talking Iraq, Afghanistan, basically all of South America. We're talking about Vietnam. Where on earth are we not talking about?
Right. Expanding the market with guns and on gunboats and whatnot.
Exactly. And he goes on to say all these characteristics are typical in greater or lesser degree of all modern capitalist states, no less than of the specifically fascist states. That to me hits so fucking hard.
It's a more crystallized, more distilled like the kind of wringing out capitalist state structure and characteristics, wringing it out into a very potent formula.
It's like a capitalist refinery.
Yeah.
You know, it just like it like creates a distillate.
Like you got let's say you have corn, which is capitalism, and then you have that like nasty liquor that people make out of corn. What is it? It's like
Everclear?
Yeah, Everclear. Which is
Everclear is fascism.
Yeah.
We're going to make that into a shirt that we can sell. So the last thing, I have some accompanying quotes from fascists to just kind of talk about this a little more, and then we'll move on. I know we're kind of staying on Rajani Palme Dutt a little bit, but I think a lot of what he says just hits crazy hard. Socialism for All does an audiobook on SoundCloud. It is free if you want to listen to it. Read it. It's pretty long. I think it's definitely worth the listen. So he says, the whole outlook and ideology of fascism is in short nothing but a rag bag of borrowings from every source to cover the realities and practice of modern monopolist capitalism in the period of crisis and of extreme class war. There is not a single creative idea. Not one. That's me talking. Not one. All of this shit that they just throw out there already kind of exists. They're just like capitalizing on it.
Right.
Capitalism in its time, in its early progressive days, achieved a great constructive work and carried enormously forward the whole of human culture in every field. The French Revolution spread a new life and a new understanding throughout the world, the outcome of which we can today be proud to inherit, even though we are today able to understand that its bourgeois basis inevitably set a limit to what it could achieve. And socialism and communism this is me talking, is looking to take that over and make it better.
Right.
And fix that contradiction between bourgeois and proletariat. He goes on, but fascism has produced nothing and can produce nothing. For fascism is the expression only of disease and death. So I think this is really important to talk about, that fascism has produced and can produce nothing. And because it is purely reactionary.
Yeah.
It doesn't...
devoid of its own unique development of its own culture and stuff. It just likes to wear the corpse of a weird past that it didn't really have.
Right.
And kind of be like, look, we're like these guys that we used to be, even though we never really were.
We never really were.
Point. Yeah.
And
except right now.
Yeah.
Like, in this weird macabre like corpse that we're parading around in.
Right.
Know? Yeah.
And fascists themselves, I'm looking at some quotes here. They basically admit they had no doctrine. They had no ideas.
Right.
I'm going to start with Mussolini. And this is the doctrine of fascism in 1932. He created his first little fascist party in 1915.
Right. And March on Rome was 1922.
Right.
So,
right. Think about that.
And he's been in power since 24. So
yeah. So, yeah.
Little late.
He says, when in the now distant March of 1919, speaking through the columns of the Popolo d'Italia, who had followed me ever since the foundation of the Fascists of Revolutionary Action in January 1915, I had in mind no specific doctrinal program. None. He had none.
Just kind of vibes, man.
He just, yeah.
It's kind of a vibes-based operation. You know?
Right. Also in Doctrine of Fascism, he says, like all sound political conceptions, fascism is action and it is thought. He keeps throughout this whole document, and we'll talk about this document in particular, he keeps stressing that it is an ideology. He's like, no, this is a it's
real, guys.
This is real. This is like
real. I'm really coming into the table with it. It's real.
Yeah.
Trust me.
He also says fascism was not the nursling of a doctrine previously drafted at a desk. It was born of the need of action and was action. It was not a party, but in the first 2 years, an anti-party and a movement. It's an anti-party. It wasn't, he's literally saying, it's not a doctrine. He literally says it. And then he's like, no, it is though.
Right.
It's like, dude,
make up your mind, bro.
You're telling on yourself. And to even prove that it is literally just reactionary bullshit, just as he says this, fascism is the resolute negation of the doctrine underlying so-called scientific and Marxian socialism. He says it is the negation of Marxism. The exact opposite. He doesn't have an ideology other than the fact that he knows it's not Marxism and he's there to fight it.
Right.
That's it.
It's like when you ask somebody, like if I ask somebody what a dog was and they're just like, well, I know it's definitely not a cat.
I know it's, yeah.
It's like, okay, well, so what is it?
Yeah,
like
what?
Well, I know it isn't a cat. It
Right.
doesn't meow. It's like, okay, but
we're not getting anywhere.
But what is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. And so this last quote, and then we'll move on. Sorry, 2 more quotes. The last one's real
Double
quick.
dipping, bro.
I'm sorry. I'm going.
Triple dipping.
Hitler says this in Mein Kampf. Every attempt to combat a world theory by means of force comes to grief in the end, so long as the struggle fails to take the form of aggression in favor of a new intellectual conception. It is only when 2 world theories are wrestling on equal terms that brute force, persistent and ruthless, can bring about a decision by arms in favor of the side which it supports. It was on this side that the fight against Marxism had failed up to that point. It was the reason why Bismarck's legislation regarding socialism failed in the end in spite of everything, and was bound to fail. It lacked the platform of a new world theory to establish, which the fight might have been fought. So he's basically saying okay, socialism has this world theory that is going to essentially free all the workers from wage slavery, essentially, right?
Right.
To combat it, we also need a world theory. We need a theory.
Right.
What? So they're kind of like, Hitler's kind of like, well, all right, let me think. What do we? So they gotta. So they're thinking.
Like
Well, I just know we need to combat it.
Right.
Again, he's just saying we need to combat this
right.
with something. Something. This isn't Mein Kampf. This is his.
He's like, I'm still working on it.
This is his freaking like.
He writes and underlines "watch this space," and then puts a little notepad, and then he publishes it. He's like, "Oh shit! I never took out the notepad from the first draft. Fuck."
No, for real.
Just left it. Yeah.
This last quote is from Robert Welch of the John Birch Society, and we're gonna get into him a good amount in this podcast.
Kind of a no name, nobody.
Well,
most people
out
there. Most people don't know about this guy, and we will get into who he is, what he's all about. But
he made candy.
He did.
He made some famous candies.
Sugar daddies,
Junior Mints.
Also a really weird, like, conspiracy theorist, like anti-Semite.
But yeah, he definitely harbored a lot of anti-Semites at his meetings. He would never say the thing. But
listen, if you're having dinner with 9 anti-Semites and you,
I know. Yeah. I'm just saying, I'm laying the groundwork for what we're going to talk about.
I don't know if
Robert
Robert Welch needs more shooters.
Yeah, he does not. So he says, in fact, the word Americanism, and he's using lowercase a Americanism as the ideology rather than the people fighting for it. He has this whole stupid thing. But in fact, the word Americanism should be made and become understood as the very antithesis of socialism and communism. So he's saying essentially the same thing, that Americanism, our form of capitalism, our culture, the way we just kind of do things in the world is the exact antithesis of socialism and communism. And at that time, and even, that's through the Cold War and everything, even up till today, Americans are super anti-socialist and anti-communist. We're very brainwashed to think so. I mean, look at the Reagan years. I mean, even Trump now is calling Kamala a communist. I mean, and he's posing himself as this ultra-American. I'm pretty sure I know Reagan grew up on John Birch Society literature. I mean, this stuff, even though he was kind of a no-name, his influence and the people who would join the John Birch Society and stem out, I have this giant graph of American fascist groups and what years and all the connections between them, and it's all color-coded, and a lot of shit just goes back to the John Birch Society.
Yes.
It's kind of a stopping ground, like a little pit stop that people just stop in and go, hey, what are you talking about?
Right.
Ooh, yeah. You're not explicit enough. Let me go do this thing, So yeah, that concludes my part on Rajani Palme Dutt. Sorry for taking up a bit of space there.
It's all good. So I think so far we've covered the analysis of Leon Trotsky. We talked about Michael Parenti,
Mikey P,
the goat, dugout.
Want to be like Mike? Who saw Like Mike? Good movie.
No, I'm shaking my head in a no fashion over here. For the listeners at home. And we also talked a good bit about Rajani Palme Dutt. Again, all very good authors, orators, books in their names. I highly recommend that we read them all. There's a few that we want to talk about. I think in the next episode, kind of plan to talk about them in this one, but we'll probably split this into 2 just to give everybody their due they're just desserts.
Yeah, I don't think Tom was expecting me to hog the spotlight this
Oh
episode.
no, it's fine.
That's my bad.
It's fine. Hey, you gotta bust it out for Rajani Palme Dutt. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, right?
Gotta
No,
bust it
I never hear his name. You know,
You never
he's not
do.
someone you hear of.
No, it's totally fine. Don't worry about it. But yeah, in the next episode, it'll probably just be an extension of these analyses. We want to particularly look at what other folks have to say, like Antonio Gramsci, H.G. Wells, as well as Umberto Eco and Robert Paxton, and then maybe a little bit from the weirdo Wilhelm Reich.
He's got some
He's a little odd, a little bit of an
wacky-
oddball.
Yeah.
A lot of people, it was funny doing a little bit of research, not to get ahead of myself, but it was funny doing a little bit of research on him because a lot of the people that cared about anything that he had to say only cared about him for all of his pseudo-scientific bullshit he was peddling.
Sweet.
But like I said, I digress. That'll be for when we cover that. Just since they have a lot to talk about in their own right that is not necessarily, I mean, aside from Antonio Gramsci having a class analysis, as well as some aspects of Wilhelm Reich's analyses, there's definitely some strange, or not strange, but like unique, not classist, not Marxist analyses brought on by H.G. Wells and Umberto Eco, as well as Paxton, to a certain extent, which I think would be due in the next episode. But yeah, I think there's some pretty good analyses that we've got going on here. I think looking ahead, so that'll be the 5th episode, and then probably beyond that is when we start getting into the show proper.
Yes, that's right.
Talking about the John Birch Society is that kind of the first topic, or you think we
I've
want to
been
jump with
mulling
Reagan?
that over. I mean, I was thinking we could maybe start with the doctrine of fascism, since that, I mean, Mussolini's kind of the guy who put fascism, put the name to fascism, not the goat.
Not the goat.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be a surprise for all of you listeners.
It was also kind of a surprise for him as he was writing it and being like, yeah, I guess this will, I guess.
That
Like,
dude could have benefited so hard from AI. He's like, AI, just write me a doctrine of fascism real quick.
I'm saying this right now, the next fascist, populist movement that swells within the US and takes over and removes our civil liberties, the doctrine that it produces will 100% be generated by Chat GPT. 100%. There's no imagination
Or whatever
in
Elon Musk's
the mind of a fascist.
AI is.
Grok. It literally sounds like a fucking caveman.
It sounds like some Dark Tides, like Warhammer shit, Grok.
Dude,
Grok
I'll
smash.
accidentally be flipping through Twitter, trying to go to the search bar, and I'll accidentally hit the button, and I'm greeted by, "You want to talk to Grok?" And I'm like, "No, I don't want to talk to whatever fucking caveman is currently living within this app that I'm supposed to talk to."
Grok tired, Grok hungry, Grok signing off now.
Suckers.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Suckers.